So, I've been doing a lot of thinking about my movie collecting habits, and I'm going to be introducing some big changes to how I buy Blu-rays. I'm in fact starting my collection from scratch, from zero. So if you want to hear my plan for 2021 and all of my collecting habits going forward, then please do stick around for this video. Hello there, my name's Elliot, and this channel is all about collecting Blu-rays. So, you're probably thinking, what the hell has gotten into me? Why do I want to restart my whole entire movie collection from scratch? At the end of 2020, I made a video on this channel about my collecting habits and why and how I collect movies on Blu-ray. And I was asking for everyone's opinion in that video, and so many people gave such brilliant answers and insights into how they collect Blu-rays. As I mentioned in that video, I've been thinking a lot about my own collecting habits and thinking about ideas of minimalism and perhaps stripping my collection down a bit. I've also been thinking a lot about not just decluttering my life physically, but also mentally. And sometimes when you have a lot of physical clutter around, it really does impact how your mind works and how you think about things. And I've definitely experienced over the last year or two a certain, I don't know, something in the back of my mind that I think is linked to how I collect movies. And the fact that I have well over 1,500 movies on these shelves really has impacted how I approach movies and perhaps how I enjoy movies. I talked in that previous video about how Blu-ray collecting for me was an act of discovery. This was how I discovered movies for the very first time. And before I collected Blu-rays, my film knowledge was very minimal. I did not know much about film at all. So 99.9% of my favourite films ever were watched for the first time on Blu-ray, and I probably wouldn't have discovered them or cinema as a whole without collecting Blu-rays. So I can already hear you crying out from the other side of this. Why would I do something so extreme? Should I not take precaution and just kind of test the waters a bit? And I was adamant that I wasn't going to do this, and I was preparing for stripping down these shelves and selling a lot of these Blu-rays on. But then I talked to some people who were a lot more level-headed than me perhaps on this, and they said, just keep your collection around for a bit and you can always get rid of it later. And why don't you do this as a sort of exercise? So think in your head that you've already gotten rid of your whole collection, but just sort of rebuild from what you've got already and put it into this new collection, if that makes any sense at all. Rather than just doing it all in one go, I want to be more thoughtful and more precise about what I'm doing here. So what I have suggested to myself to kick off this exercise is I can add 3 movies a week to my new collection from my existing collection. Or if I don't want to add 3 movies, I can choose 1 box set, no matter how many movies are within that box set. I did the maths, and 3 movies a week times by 52 for 52 weeks in a year is 156 movies a year. Now that number sounds a lot bigger, but I then calculated by roughly how many movies I have in my collection, and if I add 156 movies a year to this new collection, it would take me about 14 years to add everything that I currently have into this new collection. That really did put things in perspective for me. With this experiment, as I keep calling it, I'm not going to be concerned about what label has put out this movie on Blu-ray. I'm not going to be concerned about movies that I think I should like or movies that are important and they're must own because they're part of cinematic history. I'm not going to be concerning myself with any of that. This is purely about movies that I connect with, movies that are my favourites, that I love. Something that has played on my mind a lot recently, especially since doing this YouTube channel in the past year or so, is that I want to really become an expert in the movies that I love. At the moment, I'm pretty much just a jack of all trades, master of none. You know, I can talk about so many movies. I have seen thousands of movies, but the majority of these movies I have only seen the one time. And, you know, because you see that many movies, you forget about all of the brilliant things about some of these movies that you might have seen one time years and years ago. So I want to get rid of that approach to cinema. I want to find the films that I love and really get to know them so well and be able to talk eloquently about why I love these films. So I'm going to be running this little experiment for the next few months, and then depending on how this goes, if I really get into this, yes, I'm then going to start getting rid of a lot of my collection that will probably never make its way into this new collection. So I've been blabbering on a lot about this experiment now. So why don't I just show you the first 3 films that I have selected to add to my new Blu-ray collection. These 3 films really are a mixed bag, but I hope that it shows you what I mean by me picking my favourite films. These are films that I love and have a very strong connection with, and I'm not bothered about the label that's released these, or I'm not bothered whether people think these are great movies or not. These are personal choices to me. With that being said, I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching know what this first film is going to be. Of course, I have to go instinctively to my favourite film of all time. I'm talking about Barry Lyndon, and yes, this is the Criterion Collection version. This is currently the best version of this movie available. Just as 2001: A Space Odyssey was Kubrick's tribute to science, Barry Lyndon was his tribute to art. In all of its characteristics, this really exemplifies why I love art so much, and how something as simple as a landscape or a close-up of a face can completely move me, whether that's in the context of the story itself or just on its own. It's a film that really does take my breath away, and I can't really describe it, which is why with this exercise I want to explore these movies a lot more. And obviously Barry Lyndon, it's a film I've seen so many times already, but I really want to connect with it more and find out why it is that I love it so much. Going in a different direction now, the second film to enter my new collection is The Matrix. I love The Matrix so much. This is a film that I have a lot of nostalgia about because I saw this in my childhood, and my early teens was when I was really watching the whole trilogy. They remind me of who I was at the time and what I was going through in my childhood. It reminds me of the friends that I had at school, the friends that I would play with at the weekends, those friends that I watched The Matrix with for the first time. We put this on one Saturday afternoon and our minds were just blown. We didn't fully understand the film, but we knew that what we saw was amazing. And we then went outside and proceeded to try to redo all of the choreography and all of the fight scenes from the movie, which would be really embarrassing to watch now. I do wish I had recorded that. So many memories, and that's why it has to be in this collection. And the third film that is entering my new collection, again, something completely different to the last choice. It's Poetic Justice. This is the John Singleton film starring Janet Jackson and Tupac Shakur. This is a movie that not a lot of people talk about. No one really says this is a great movie, but this is a movie that I love completely. I think John Singleton is a great director. Many people know him from Boys in the Hood, which shares a lot of similar themes to what is in Poetic Justice. But I actually prefer this film to Boys in the Hood, even though I do think that is a great film. I genuinely think this is one of the best romances in cinema, and a lot of people will disagree with me. That's fine, but that's why it's going in the collection. I find this such a beautiful, moving story. The music by Stanley Clarke of Return to Forever fame. He's one of my favourite jazz musicians, and I love his music in this movie. The poetry as well is by Maya Angelou, and it's read by Janet Jackson. So it's just an all-round brilliant film, and we watched it the other night, and it just brings so many feelings to the fore. So I love this movie. That's why it's going in the collection. So that's just a brief look at why these 3 films are kicking off my new collection, this experiment for 2021. I do hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope it's perhaps given you some things to think about, or perhaps it's just let you know that I am completely crazy and that I'm doing something really extreme that I'm maybe going to regret. Who knows? It's exciting. If you've stuck around for the whole thing, thank you very much for watching. Please do give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I do a lot of videos about Blu-ray collecting, and I do reviews and lists and that kind of stuff. So if you want to hear about those videos as soon as they get uploaded, then please do subscribe to the channel. I want to say a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as well. I'm going to be incorporating this new experimental endeavour into Patreon as well. There's going to be extra content coming on Patreon for this, because I know it has been lacking lately, but going forward, I'm going to have some big changes coming to Patreon. So thank you to everyone who has supported already, and to anyone who hasn't, please do go and check it out and keep an eye for changes that are coming very soon. If you want to stick around on the channel, please do click one of these videos on screen right now, because I'm sure you can get some good recommendations from me. I'll be back very soon, so until then, stay well and keep watching great films.